Oh, g'day everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by Crowcast. Of course, round 14 saw us go down to Tasmania and absolutely fluff our lines. After a great start, we decided we didn't want to win that game, and quite a disappointing result, but some would say maybe karma got us after last week's win over Brisbane. Anyway, we're going to get all around it and have a chat, so without any further ado, let's crack straight in, shall we? G'day everyone and welcome. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord and on YouTube. We've got the usual suspects filing in on Discord, which is great. Don't forget that we're live and interactive, so if you want to spill your guts or vent or just tell us we're a bunch of idiots, then go right ahead and put your hand up and we'll get you on the podcast tonight. And don't forget too that whether you're on YouTube or Discord, all your chat is interactive, so if you're on YouTube and you want to have a comment, then go right ahead and say what you think, and we'll put it on the screen. Joining me tonight, as usual, is my partner in post-inebriation sadness, Jeffrey. How are you, sir? Brownie?
G'day, mate. Very well.
Well, you're not. You're not very well at all.
A bit dusty, but you know. That's just the way it goes.
Macca on the waters tonight, mate. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm great. I mean, I haven't touched a drop, mate, so I'm in good form.
Right, you're hosting the show. Big man, how are you, mate?
Good, thanks, mate. Well, I'm not pissed like you two, but I am pissed off about the result of the weekend. So
we're not pissed anymore.
Post pissed, yeah. No, it wasn't the greatest game to watch, and it certainly wasn't the result we wanted.
No, absolutely not. A bit unfortunate that after a promising start, we just we'll talk about what happened, I guess. As I mentioned, don't forget that we're live and interactive. We had a great response to last week's epic 2.5 hour marathon over 2,000 views, but I can guarantee anyone that's watching this, we won't be going 2.5 hours tonight. Already read the riot act. So look, but we do appreciate everyone's support on YouTube in particular. I had a bit of a glitch with the audio, but I've sorted that out. So this week the podcast should drop tomorrow morning as per normal. All right. Without any further ado, let's not even wait around. Let's just talk straight away about the bloody game. And it was Hawthorn 6-11-47 to Adelaide 5-14-44 in a fantastic advertisement for Friday night footy in Tasmania in an open stadium. So I'm sure that experiment won't last very long. Macca, give me your thoughts, mate.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, a night game in Tasmania in midwinter. I mean, who could complain about that? I mean, 3 degrees, sopping wet, bloody ground. Umpires not up to scratch. But in fairness to both sides, it was a very hard-fought game, and I'd have to say that it was one of those games that whoever won it was going to be lucky, and the other one unfortunate. But it really was a bit of a game of two halves. Where we dominated that first half. We just didn't put them away with that poor kicking for goal. And then in the second, really the third quarter that won the game, when they actually kicked 2 goals amongst a myriad of points by both sides, which proved to just help them back into the game. And then the last quarter, we managed to be in front with about 4 minutes to go. And I am furious about the goal that absolutely cost us the game, the last goal of the game. If you have a look at it and look at the structure, if you look at how we set up for a boundary throw near their goal, when we, it was only about 2 minutes to go or whatever it was. And when the ball's tapped, there are 4 Hawthorn players goal side. 4 players goal side without an opponent.
Yep.
That was absolutely disgraceful. And look, if they set up properly, would not have got that goal, and we would have won the game. So the game was really lost in that particular moment. It was hard fought all the rest of the game, but it was blown in that one little thing there. So that's my take on it, and I was infuriated by that because it's costly. It could cost us a position in the 4. I believe it will still make the 8 because we were placed in that sense. But it's just to blow a game like that after you fight your guts out for a whole game and then blow it through bad setting up. That really was just too much. Icing on the cake.
Big man.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well summed up by Macca. I think there's also it just showed the signs again of a team that gets in front and doesn't know quite how to hold a lead. And against Port Adelaide and Brisbane, we got away with it. But against the Hawks, we didn't. And again, we're too conservative with ball in hand in that second half. I think we played to the conditions okay, but like I've always had a theory that when it's slippery or wet or whatever, you get punished less for taking risks because generally, even a direct turnover can be a spilled mark or it can go over the top. So I'm not sure why we're so conservative with our ball movement. Again, I think it must be a Nick's initiative because it's been a consistent theme now. And then also just, as like the moment that Macca alluded to, there was just a lack of composure and smarts in the last 5-10 minutes, unfortunately. So it was one that got away. And look, at the end of the day, I actually didn't expect us to win that game beforehand. So it actually hurts, when you actually get yourselves into a position where we should have won. And we actually did pretty well with our contested work. I thought we beat them in the midfield, which is not something that we've done a heap this year at times. Unfortunately, our forward line didn't really fire, but it was a tough night for the forwards. But I'm sure we'll have a discussion about our tall forward setup going forward. But yeah, it was just it's one that we let go, unfortunately. But I think we all agree that 2 out of 3 games of the last 3 we would have been happy with, and we got that. It's just that when we had that third game sewn up pretty much, and we just didn't make the most of our opportunities early on, and then fluffed it in the second half. It still hurts, even if we know that we're doing pretty well considering where we are on the ladder.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brownie, we at the start of this little 3-game stretch, we said 2-1 would be an acceptable outcome, and that's what we're left with. And yet, this one really kind of left a bit of a sour taste in the mouth, didn't it?
Yeah, and of course, 2 out of 3 you'd take it, and we're still safely in the 4. But I just think we started so well, and we set ourselves up for a win, and the fact we didn't get the win. And I think, like Macca said, it was a game of 2 halves, and we came out really quite positive. I thought the second half we, like Big Man said, we just didn't sort of take any risks at all. The couple of times we did take risks and we pushed the ball to the other side of the ground, and we really moved the ball quickly, and we got the ball into our forward line and created opportunity, but we just didn't do it enough. So you'd assume it must be a directive, but we've got the players to take the risks, and we've got the forward line. If we can get the ball down there quickly, we've got the forward line to finish, but we're just not making the most of it. But yeah, it was just a really disappointing after such a dominant first half. It was a bit similar to the Geelong game in that we really dominated. We didn't put the score on the board, and it came back to bite us.
Yeah, look, and Matthew Nicks said in his presser afterwards that basically it was our poor kicking and our lack of taking opportunities that ultimately hurt us. And on the surface, you can't really argue with that. There was some shots, whilst a lot of them were snaps or, ground ball shots for goal, aside from the early Thilthorpe miss and one other that I can't think of right now, we should have made more of our opportunities. We had more scoring shots than they did, and we should have made more of our opportunities. That said, what you mentioned, Brownie, and the other 2 of you have as well, is our ball movement. And just over the last few weeks, the fact that our ball movement has slowed down so much, and I don't like the fact that it seems to me as if we're playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And, you know, Branny, you and I watched a bit of it again this morning. And, you know, there were some opportunities there that the players just weren't willing to take because it would have resulted in opening the ground up in the event of a turnover. But I just feel like I go back to McRae's philosophy in the grand final against Brisbane, where a few minutes to go they got up in front, and they were 3 points down, and McRae put the sign up to go for it, and they got the next goal to 3 points up, and instead of shutting it down with a couple of minutes left, he put the sign up to go for it again, and I remember reading, you know, at the time that everyone was questioning him, and even he was questioning himself. But his response was, "Well, if we get the next one, the game's dead," and that's exactly what happened. You know, that's playing the game to win, and that's backing your players to win rather than not lose. And I just wish that we had a coaching staff and a mindset amongst the players of playing to win instead of and backing ourselves in rather than playing to lose, and keeping other teams in the game as a consequence, because there's never a large score differential. Mac.
Yeah, well, I think that it's a little bit, you know, we were playing a game plan that was really not leery, but we were playing a flamboyant type of game plan, and the idea was to kick more goals than the opposition, basically. And you know, it was obvious that if you kept on going on that path, this is early in the season, that you know that's not going to take that type of football was never going to win a premiership. So I think the adjustment has been too severe at the moment, as you say. We were taking all the risk in the world before, and you know, it's a funny thing when you play with that flamboyancy. You do, unless you play against a really, really good team.
Can I just interrupt you, Mac? I don't want to shut you down, Mac, but can I just interrupt you? We weren't actually taking risks. What we were doing was playing more aggressively, but I would suggest that we weren't taking risks as such. We were just playing in a way that we could get exposed. We were more. There were more opportunities for us to be exposed if we fumbled or dropped a mark or missed a target.
Yeah, well, call it that if you like, because the end result's the same. Is if you make it because you're really going hard for the score. If you do make an error, it goes back the other way. We were getting pretty high scores against us as well. And what they've done is that they've actually gone a little bit more conservatively and done a little tweak in the game plan where they don't do some of the things they were doing before. And it's actually at the moment, it's reasonably predictable what we're going to do. Whereas before, I thought, you know, you just knew it was going to be all flat out attack from the opposition knew that. But at the moment, they also know that at the moment we've got a pretty conservative route, and it's only when we do things well that we get forward, get through. And you know, on a night like it was in this particular match, I guess it was always going to be that style of game as well. But yeah, look, I do think there is just an element we are playing a little bit more conservatively, Fiend. And if you look back at our scores in recent times, I think they have dropped a little bit. But
they've dropped substantially.
Yeah, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get a game plan that can win finals. And look, I don't think they've got it right at the moment. They've probably gone too harsh the other way because, you know, to win any game, you've got to kick more goals than the opposition. And and I think at times at the moment we don't really go for that attack like we were doing early in the season.
Well, big man, sorry, go on, Max. I thought you finished.
Well, I've got to say, I'm really not sure what their game plan is at the moment.
Well, I can tell you what the game plan is. The game plan is to compress the game to half the ground, right? So they will only go up and down the line, and they will kick contest to contest, and they will grind. That we do not proactively switch anymore. Very rarely do we proactively switch. Sometimes we move the ball from one side to another because we're forced to, but we will not aggressively switch the ball. We are not hitting up 45-degree targets anymore, right? And we are relying on down-the-line contested marks and ground ball wins, and a winning percentage in contested ball. And we're relying on our small forwards to get our forward line to get the job done. That's the game plan. He's basically taken out half the ground, and he's done that on the premise you would imagine that it's easier to defend half a ground than a whole ground, right? And what we saw on the weekend was that Mitchell said, "Well, all right, if you want to press up high and try and compress the ground, we're going to flood your forward line so that you can't get a clear jump at the ball. And then when we get a turnover, we're going to run at you the other way. And instead of having a crowded situation like we had, they have one-on-ones because we're now running back. Hawthorn are running through us and we're now running back." And big man, to me, that's the danger of this slow ball movement, is that our one-wood, which is our attacking forward line, it's just rendered a bit useless because there's half the bloody population of Australia in our forward 50.
That's a good observation, Fang. Yeah, I will say, in terms of our scores dropping off, it's definitely, obviously the way we're playing, but also the conditions themselves. In general, our games have been lower scoring across the board, and we're not the only team. It's been running a lot in a lot of places at the moment. But at the same time, we're not maximising our assets. And, it's all well and good that we're tightening up in defence, and that's great because that was an issue earlier in the season, even when we were going gangbusters. We were getting split open a little bit by opposition defences. Yeah, that's not happening as much now, but, now we're in a situation where we sort of lost the art of scoring. And we're not creating nearly as much space inside our forward line. Obviously, teams like Hawthorn are putting more numbers back as well to affect that, but we're not really doing ourselves any favours. And I said it before, but I've always I just think that if let's say you have the ball, it's a wet night or a slippery night as it was. You have the ball and you kick into the corridor, and it's one of those balls that if you mark it, you open the whole ground up. If you don't, then on a dry day, you would turn it over and the other team would go and score the other way. But in the wet, you can get away with that sometimes. Even if you don't hit that pass perfectly, it doesn't mean the other team's going to score on the back of it because there's a good chance they'll fumble or go to their hands, whatever, and you can still maintain that forward. Keep pushing the ball forward.
Well, look at the last play that Hawthorn played that won them the game. Dylan Moore bloody switches play into the corridor.
Yeah, it's harder. Yes, it's harder to hit the kick in the wet, but it's also a lot harder to punish on turnover for the other team those kicks because a lot can go wrong when the ball's slipping and sliding around. So, I just think that we didn't read the room that well, and I think that if that's by instruction, then we're not getting it quite right, and Nix has got to take the blame for that because we're too conservative. I'm glad that obviously we're defending better and we're holding teams to slower scores, but we've got to become we've got to have a fear factor in terms of what we present the opposition, that we can be a dynamic, ruthless team that is going to cut you to ribbons. We're not that right now. And we were that earlier in the year, and we've lost that. Obviously, again, as I said, the winter conditions does have an effect, but not that much. Not as much as we've allowed it to. And it's been a bit disappointing to see, even though we've got the results lately. It cost us on the weekend.
Yeah, and I think, Brownie, what we saw a couple of times too is a lack of a lack of a counter to Mitchell's change up after half time. So obviously they decided to get more numbers around the contest and to up the pressure at the contest, but also, as we mentioned, flood the forward 50. Now you would think that a coaching panel, when they're planning for the game and they've decided that they're going to play this condensed ground style of play, surely they then go, okay, well, so what if Hawthorn do this? How are we going to counter that? And to me, there doesn't seem to be any evidence of that, because you and I both saw a few occasions where our boys just continued to bomb it into forward 50 to a pack of 60,000, and there were opportunities for a bloke to offer a lead and just hit an easy hit up, and we weren't dropping our eyes, whether it's through instruction or lack of composure, I don't know, but there were opportunities to run into space and just hit up a nice little 30-metre pass.
Yeah, I think there was, I don't know if it was conditions or just like team instructions, but there was a reluctance if someone that was, 70 metres out to actually try and hit that leading target. Whether, I gather on the basis that there's risk there, but if you're bombing it in long and they've got numbers back, there's no chance we're going to take a mark anyway. So your best option is trying to hit a lead up forward. But we just didn't seem to be willing to do it. Or as you say, by the time we lifted our eyes, the lead was already passed and the opportunity was gone. And when you've got big numbers back, you might only get that one opportunity to hit a player. And if you don't take it, then it's gone. And then your only option is to bomb it in long. And and with 3 tall forwards and I think you picked up that Phil thought was being double teamed a hell of a lot of the night. There was just no chance.
They were just sagging off text. They were just sagging off text and double teaming Thilthorpe all night. And to me, everyone on this panel and most of the people listening would know that the easiest kick in the world, the biggest cop out in the world, is to kick it long down the line. Because as long as you kick it properly, you've done your job. Right, and then it's up to the next bloke to mark it or whatever. And if it comes back the other way, it's not your fault because you kicked it long down the line and it was a nice drop punt, went 45 metres, and what else. Whereas the harder thing to do, the thing to do that puts you under more pressure, is to hit a nice 30-metre pass to a bloke running at a 45-degree angle, sort of exposing the ground, but putting us in a much better position attacking-wise. And it just feels like our players, more often than not, will take the cop-out thing, the cop-out decision, long down the line, or, like Wayne Miller, who kicks 20 passes that are 15 metres to the right or left, or, at no stage does he ever break a line. And I wonder whether that's a lack of confidence by our players or a consequence of a mindset that's drilled into them to protect the defensive side first before you attack.
It's hard to know, isn't it, Ben? They are doing exactly what you just said. Very rarely are they. Well, certainly in this game, they didn't. I don't think they did it at all. Cross back into the centre. It was just down the line, non-stop, and it was quite, and when you're playing like that with a wet ball, you're not going to get very exhilarating football. It's just going to be either a contest or it's going to be knocked down to the ground and probably out of bounds, and there was a lot of that. I wouldn't say there was a lot of opportunity to perhaps cross into the centre, but there would have been opportunities that were there, and we weren't even looking for them. So I don't know. Maybe that is what the coaches instruct them to do, because we certainly don't look there. We just go straight down the line. Yeah.
And big man, there's a couple of positional situations that are starting to stand out that are really strange. And the first one is the amount of time Riley O'Brien spends in forward 50. What the fuck is he doing in the forward 50? We've already got a bloody half a forest down there, and you want to go and plant another big bloody 2-metre tree down there. Why do we need Riley O'Brien down there?
That goal sense, mate. Look, I think that's it does offer us very little, because, and that's just nothing to do with Rob. I actually think Rob was one of our better players, and
yeah, I thought so too. It's not a criticism of him. It's a directive.
It's not his go.
It's a directive because he's also taking the ruck work. Tex is no longer taking the forward 50 ball-ins anymore, or stoppage work. He's no longer doing it. So it's a change. It's an instruction.
Yeah, and like those Tex throw-ins weren't working that well earlier in the year. But it's funny how we've just said, all right, that's done. I think that's not quite the way to go about it. No, I love Rob to be the guy that, sits off, 50, 60 metres out for goal and takes that blind kick out from the defenders.
Exactly.
And rather than, being the big hulking forward, when we've already got a few boys like that. And I know the other boys aren't offering heaps in the air other than filthy at the moment, but yeah, it just seems unnecessary. And it's, that and a few other reasons why some of their small defenders run it out pretty easily. It's strange. I'm not sure what they were going for there.
Well, obviously Matthew Nix, Brownie was concerned about their rebound off halfback, and he brought in the defensive forward powerhouse of Lockie Murphy to shut that down to great effect, because Impey didn't quite get leather poisoning. It was close though.
Yeah, and not only did MP get a lot of the ball, but Murphy, a couple of absolutely ridiculously easy drop marks that were costly, where we could have got momentum, and not a lot. Yeah, didn't get a lot of the ball. It's just amazing that we went back to that well. I can't believe that we've done it, and I'm hoping that one game is enough for him to realise that when he dropped him originally, he made the right call.
But it was good to see though that it was good to see though that the coaches learnt from their mistake, because once they realised that Hawthorn were getting a lot of drive off that half back line through their medium and small defenders, what they actually did was take off another pressure forward to make our forward line even slower, because Luke Pedlow would have been useless, I would have thought. So fantastic move by Nix to keep Tex on the ground and take another small forward off in wet conditions where the half-back line of the opposition is killing you.
Yeah, look, I was going to raise that very point about Impey. Impey was actually probably the difference between the two sides in the end, because the number of times he got the ball and his usage of the ball was very, very good. And I was just getting sick and tired of screaming out, "Who's on fucking Impey?" I mean, seriously, it was just whoever was on it just wasn't on him. He just kept getting the ball non-stop and he used it very, very well. And I think, quite frankly, if he had been negated a little bit better, well, we would have won the game. And I think even that was just a great big. Say it again. Somebody says, "Well, I won't tell you." Look, it was disgraceful. Poor coaching. That he was the drive from the back line, and yet he didn't do nothing in particular to cut it out. It was horrible.
So why didn't we? There was a couple of things we could have done. We could have done what we did to Zorko, or maybe Brisbane did to themselves by having Zorko on keys last week. But we could have made Impey accountable by sticking keys on him. And if Hawthorn changed that up, we could have done what 90% of the population would have done and taken off the big lump of a forward in wet conditions who obviously can't run anymore, Tex Walker, and made Luke Pedler just completely concentrate on shutting down that rebound out of defence. But we didn't choose to do that. We chose. I could not believe, and I'm happy to open it to the panel and to the audience and to the people on YouTube and anyone else to tell me why. Give me one reason why it was a good idea to leave a Tex on and take Luke Pedler off. Why was that a good idea?
Everybody's going to be silent. You said ask for one good reason. I can't think of one. There is no good reason.
But we know why. Because Nix trusts senior players over youth, whether that's a selection or whether that's in game. He wants the experience, and he doesn't. He fails to acknowledge that sometimes, experience isn't worth that much in game. And it was clear, and this is no slight on Tex either.
No, of course not. He was the wrong player to be on the ground.
It wasn't the conditions. We've seen this before. Teams will sub off at all, bring on some run. And we've done that in the past, but for some reason we went against that. I praised Nix's use of the sub last week, but I can't praise this one. This was bad. And Pedler wasn't even playing particularly bad as it was. I thought he was okay. Like, he wasn't having much offensive influence, but his pressure and his tackling was great. So I'm not sure what was going on there. And, you know, I wouldn't have, like, it wasn't like I would have subbed Murphy either. I think we needed as much.
We needed as much ground ball as we could. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, so obviously we stuffed up going into the game, but more so we stuffed up during the game. And, I think that should definitely be questioned, because there was no real reason to keep Tex on the field, given what was going on in the game. It was blind to everyone. It was everyone could see what was happening, and I don't know what we're thinking.
I was shocked that no one asked Nix that question at the presser. I was shocked that no one asked it. It was one of the most defining decisions of the game, and it was baffling. Brownie, the other thing I think that's become evident over the last probably month or so is that we've lost that dynamism off halfback. I don't know whether it's through form or design, but first few games we're getting a lot of run from Hinge and a lot of run from Max Michaelani off that halfback line. Now we seem to be getting more from Josh Worrell, but it's not that fast line breaking stuff, because that's not the type of player that Josh is. I don't know whether... I mean, Hinge had a bit of a down night. It wasn't his best game by any stretch, but I just feel like they're a bit subdued off halfback, and the good teams at the moment are getting a lot of run off halfback, and we don't seem to be doing that.
Yeah, that's right. I think partly it's personnel when you've got Laird and Miller that just don't offer that. But you're right, Hinge was giving us a bit more, like he was getting more metres gained earlier in the year. Now he doesn't seem to be breaking lines at all. And Michael Andy had a bit of a quiet game. I don't know if he had more of a negating role, and that was, you know, he was doing his job possibly, but there's still, you know, he in other games he's been quite proactive, and he was getting to the stage he was getting, you know, he was becoming a real weapon because he was being a lot more proactive as he sort of got his confidence. But the last 2 or 3 weeks that seems to have dried up a bit as well. So yeah, I think we need a rework in defence. We need to be more dynamic and breaking lines. Again, does it come back to instruction from the coaching staff as well?
Well, I think it does, because the amount of intercept marks that we took, I mean, Worrell and Keane both took a fair few intercept marks, and usually the next kick from that is the 45 to a Mitch Hinge, or the handball off to a Mitch Hinge or Max Michaelani, who then breaks a line with a kick, an attacking kick, you know. But what we're doing now, obviously, is just going up and down the line, so there doesn't appear to be a need to have that run coming from behind Keane and Worrell, you know, that overlap's no longer required. And Miller's job seems to be, once he gets the ball, is kick it to a target so that we can stop and reset off a mark. There doesn't seem to be any desire at all.
20 metre.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the target's always close. It's almost a bit like when Rory Sloane, just before he retired, every kick was a 15 or 20 metre sort of safe, very, very safe chip kick, which all it does is give them time to get back.
Yeah, and the thing is that the sole purpose of Miller's disposal seems to be just to get it to a mark so that we can stop and reset. But as you rightly point out, and that's the problem, you know, that sort of slow transition has resulted in them being able to get back as well and flood defensively. So, you know, there's parts of our game, you can say that we needed to be more defensive, and you know, I wouldn't disagree, although I'm a bit of the kick more goals than the opposition school, but that's okay. I can understand how you can't afford to leak goals. That's fine. But to completely stifle our game to a point where we're blunting the effectiveness and the dangerousness of our weapons, and to you know, to stop us, but like, we're very predictable and we're not very difficult to play against. And you can see it took Mitchell a quarter and a half to understand what we were doing. And, you know, there was some good vision of him and DMAC pouring over some vision or some stats or whatever. They didn't even watch the last 2 or 3 minutes of the second quarter. They're already
Yeah, I
they're
saw
already
that.
deciding what they were going to do at halftime. And part of it was revving them up to give more intensity, which was fair enough. But we're not making ourselves very hard to play against. We're one-dimensional.
And Fiend, it's interesting. Like this is like a little microcosm, but like you got in the SNFL report, right? This was actually last week when we beat South. It was interesting. Like if you read, the 5 key takeaways, whatever, from Matty Wright, and they were talking about Edwards, who is ironically someone we could actually use with his long, really long kick, and he could break the lines even more than he does, but he does offer a bit of run. But what he does is he's surgical by foot and he takes risks. But it was interesting to note that he specifically said, Matty Wright, that it's all about defense for Charlie, and off good defense, that's when his game goes to the next level. So we've got a guy here who's absolute lethal by foot. His kicking actions isn't typical, but it's very Brodie Smith like. And we don't. That's not even something we our coaches even think about. It's all about defense, and when I say that's obviously something that's spread around the group. It's all about conservative and defense, and obviously I love our players, and I think we actually become quite a good defensive unit. Intercept games, probably never been better, but there's no drive there, and yes, personnel wise, we probably, like Brownie mentioned, we probably don't have we don't have the Wangan Millers of the world, but even the guys we do have are clearly not instructed to really take risks. And also our midfielders aren't getting involved enough. They're not pushing up high enough to take marks and be outlets and use the ball. Like Sligo, when he was playing really good football, in his second and third year, he would take a mark on half back and then hit a really nice kick into the corridor or do something tricky. And we're not seeing that from him. We're not seeing that from a lot of our players.
That's because
in general are down at the moment.
That's because they're taught. That's because they're told that the next contest is going to be 45 metres down the line, so you better get to the foot of that contest.
Yeah.
There's no point Saligo offering a lead 25 metres away because he's got to be at the next contest down the line. And I think that's the knock-on effect, right, Mac, that because your smalls, your midfielders and your wingers have different roles to play in that kind of a game plan, that the options to take the 45 disappear because they're assigned somewhere else.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I also think we actually really missed Peatling, and this would have been an absolute ideal weather conditions for.
Agreed.
And so any substitute for him was going to be a downgrade, and could be the difference between winning and losing. I actually thought that young Edwards has been playing that well. I thought that. One move that could have been done, I'm not saying it would have been the right move, it's just a potential move, but it was to bring Edwards in on a half-back flank and put Laird back into the centre just for that match of Peatling's absence, because Laird is, although he's not the most skillful player in the world, he does fight hard for the ball around at ground level, and I think
I'm going to mute you, Mako.
I know you wouldn't like.
You need to start drinking again. You made more sense on the piss.
No, but I just thought that that was only, I said a possibility. I didn't say a definite. That's got to cover my ass for that. But I just think that if you look at that, I suppose even though we did play very conservatively, and we did, there's no doubt about that, we still did have scoring opportunities in that first half in particular to probably put them away.
Yeah, we did. And 100%. Absolutely. I think my criticism is more that when Mitchell changed the way he had them set up, that we had no consequence. We had no second string to our bow, and to me it was like surely you would say, all right, if we're going to do this, then Hawthorn might do this, and if they do that, what are we going to do? Are we going to instruct the boys to look to hit up short? Because when like the way to kick to combat a flood is not to kick into it, but it's to try and draw them out by hitting up the short ones and trying to move laterally to create space. But what we did was we just bombed it in.
Yeah, and look, I watched every game on the weekend, and in every other game, you see teams doing this lateral movement to, at times, prepared to give ground, go backwards and sideways and across and back. The idea is to get them eventually out of position so that you can make that move, which is a really attacking move, but open up that little gap that you need. But you picked on it before. We're just too much kicking down the line near the boundary. Whether that was instructions or whether it was just a lack of thought process. Given that it was heavy conditions, you didn't get a lot of time to to really think about your disposal because it was quite crowded. But no, I think it was an option that we could have used a lot more than we did. And it's something we've got to really develop into our game, this movement. That when we were full out attack, I think we did used to use it a lot more. But that it seems to have just disappeared.
100%. Yeah, that was the key. It was that first 45 thing. I think my biggest takeaway from that game, Brownie, was that we've watched this game 50 times, right? You knew as soon as we started missing a few shots in the first half, you knew that Hawthorn were going to come back and we'd get done in a close one. This is not the first time this has happened. And it seems to me that the coaching staff has just keeps saying we've got to do better. And this time it was lack of goal-kicking accuracy that probably cost us the game. But it's always something. And I just feel like we've watched this game too many times and the coaching staff need to go back to the drawing board, because why would you want to continue with these sort of outcomes all the time?
Yeah, I think it's a bit like Macca said earlier. When we were playing that attacking role earlier in the year, it was a bit too much, and we needed to reset. But we've just way over counted it. And you're right. For the last 3 years, the general game plan has been that really slow ball movement, and trust the process, and it'll turn around. If we keep doing all the basics right, it'll turn around. The problem is it doesn't. And you're right. Had we taken every opportunity, I mean, Tex missed a couple of goals that that he would kick. 9 times out of 10, and even the set shot that he missed, he in his good days he would have got that 8 out of 10. So we had a few opportunities, like Philthorpe as well. We could have probably
Rankin,
got to the point where
Rash.
we put Rankin as well. Yeah, could have put the game away in the first half pretty much, and then his plan of just playing defensive footy, you could probably say he would have got away with it. But like Macca said before, also that's not the kind of game plan that wins finals. We've got to have more strings to our bow, and we've got to be a bit more nimble when we can see a clear change in the opposition's game plan. As soon as that third quarter started, you could just see it was just obvious. One, they dominated contested possession after that, or clearances, and they, as you said, they flooded back in huge numbers, and it didn't appear like there was any even an attempt to counter that at any time. I'd love to hear what they were talking about in the coach's box. There
was that footage with a few minutes to go, with about 5 minutes to go, of Nix and Davis having a full-on blue. God only knows what that was about, but I don't think I've seen Matthew Nix as angry and animated as in that little bit of footage. So that was interesting.
What do you think it could have been, Frank?
Oh, they're probably arguing about whether to have the pasta or the bloody the curry.
Well, for Nixie to be that animated, you're probably right.
I think, and we talk about game day tactics, and it's probably fair to say that the coaches can have their quarter, half-time and three-quarter time addresses, but it's ultimately up to the players. I think it's less about game day coaching and more about drilling during the week for certain scenarios. And we've seen that we can't hold on to a league. We don't seem to have a good routine for, a 2-minute wind down the clock situations. We've been burnt so many times. We didn't seem to have a counter for a flooded forward 50. So it just seems to me that not only are we not great match day in the coaching box, but our drills and our match sims and all that during the week aren't really adding any value to what we're doing on game day.
Well, there's one they ought to be practicing all week, Dean. It ought to be boundary throw-ins near the opposition's goals. Set up bloody properly. I mean, that's in the end what costs the game.
Well, of course, but I mean...
Elementary. Even elementary things.
I think that was probably just a brain fart. It looked to me like Worrell initially was on Gunston and then handed over to Keane, and Keane didn't have the awareness to drop off when Gunston dropped off and got sucked into that little contest. But again... Yeah. These are the sorts of things that you do during the week. It's match simulation, and we don't seem to have counters for certain situations. And the obvious counter to the flood, as I said, was you start hitting up the short and moving laterally to try and spread the zone. And at no stage they flooded for a good 3/4 of the game, and at no stage did we look to move the ball side to side?
I know that a thinking side would have done that. We obviously played to certain instructions, but a thinking side would have done that anyhow.
I disagree, Macca. I disagree. A thinking side back in the 70s would have done that because it was very much more about what you do on the field. But these days, these blokes are drilled to within an inch of their lives, and they play to tactics and strategies. That's why you see them hold up those stupid bloody boards at certain times, and the players know exactly what to do when one of those boards come up. And I would have thought the board to come up would have been the one that said, all right, start hitting it up short. But they obviously don't practice these things, or they don't drill it so that Geordie Dawson can run around and say, start hitting up the short ones or something. Well,
yeah, but we're totally in agreement on that. We didn't seem to have a myriad of options. We just very limited options is the way we played the game, and obviously playing to the game plan that we're supposed to, because we kept doing it all the time. Otherwise, you'd think there'd be some changes made. It wasn't the right one. Well, look, as I said, it wasn't totally the wrong one. Not totally, because, as I said, if we made the most of our opportunities in the first half, we could have still won the game. In the second half, you're quite right. You saw a Hawthorn coach sitting down there with his offsider, and they were looking at what we were doing, and it's really more what they did to counter what we were doing than anything else, because they changed their game plan to not only stop ours, but then also make us chase them. And that was the difference in the second half. In the first half, we were on the offensive. On the second half, we were on the defensive. And as I said, one coach knew what he was doing. The other one didn't seem to do anything to do about it. He just went with it and gradually just lost the game.
Big man, you've been down to training a few times in your life, like 1,000. Have you? Yeah. Have you seen any evidence of certain situational training, like I was talking about?
Well, it's interesting, because at least during pre-season, there was very much a focus on two methods. One was run and carry, make sure handball receives, running at the back, going through the corridor when necessary. And the other one was the time wasting, chipping it around, not just conceding up down the line all the time, and actually thinking your way through things. So I'm mentioning things that both of them don't seem to be particularly we haven't seen a lot of it in the last 6 weeks or so. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like how you can plan for certain things, but that's also, that's how we train. But then there's also what does the opposition throw at you to stop you from doing those things. And Mitchell's a smart coach. I think that's pretty obvious. He's got a list that I actually don't rate that high. And he's really maximizing what they've got. They went through a pretty short rebuild, and they've got a couple of stars, and they've got some really good young talent, but they don't have like the weapons that other teams have. But he's still able to maximize their what they do have. So the method has definitely changed. It's definitely wasn't this conservative. I mean, it has been at times at training, but it wasn't like this. And I think like there's the coaching side of it, but there's also the players. Are our players handling the pressure that opposition put on them, or handling the moments as well as they should? And as much as you like to think, it's about drilling the players as much as possible and to the point where it's automatic, there's still that mental, the mental side of things. And I think players could be questioned a bit whether, they've got that resolve and the smarts to sort of, maneuver around these situations where, teams are coming hard, teams are coming hot, and yet you can work your way through it. As a group, do we trust our players? And I sometimes question that because, no, but do you like Fiend? Do you actually trust our players that we've got enough smart, intelligent footballers in our team at the moment?
Well, I absolutely do, because when they're allowed to play off the leash, they destroy teams. And Brownie, we had this conversation, did we, about overcoaching and players second guessing, and we've had evidence of like players' careers being impacted. Like Chase Jones is clearly one who was impacted by overcoaching, in my opinion. I would say our senior players aren't trustworthy, but they showed that 5-6 years ago, which is why they shouldn't be in the team anymore. But I would trust Geordie Dawson in a heartbeat. I would trust Josh Rochelle to get a bloody clearance almost to save my life. But they are drilled to play a certain way to the exception of everything else, Brownie, in my opinion. And as you said to me earlier today, it looks like they could be overcoached.
Yeah, sometimes you wonder whether they're thinking so much about what they're meant to do in a certain situation that they're not reacting naturally to the situation and playing accordingly. They're thinking, what should I be doing? And it's because there's just too much. There's so much structure now. I think they're losing their ability to think on their feet and just to do what's natural. And in terms of trusting your players, I'm with you. You can trust them, but you've got to give them the free rein to actually take some risks, and you've also got to accept they're not going to get it right all the time, because that's the only way they get good at it. But
well, when we haven't got it right, the coach has gone and bloody blamed them in press conferences, and that's the problem. You see
which
Fagan,
is just shocking leadership.
Well, Fagan last week, when Brisbane burnt a game against us, the last thing he was going to do was blame his players. He was all about, we were lucky. Adelaide were lucky. We should have won the game. In other words, the players did great. We weren't lucky. Whereas Nix comes out this week and says, well, we were probably lucky last week. Fuck me, honestly. That's the message you want to give to your players, that you won a close game against the second or third team of the comp, but you guys were lucky. And that's borne out this week by you guys not being lucky. It's shocking messaging, Brownie, in my opinion, and I've said it before, and I think it's really indicative of the mindset around the coaching group and around that permeates through to the playing group, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it going to change though? I mean, it's been happening under Nix's watch. Is it going to change? Maybe if we get some different assistant coaches in, maybe there might be a bit of pushback, but at the moment, and hopefully there's a bit of pushback now with Nix having someone next to him in the box, and
they don't like each other anymore.
That could have been. What's that?
They don't like each other anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it's good to see a bit of animation in the box, and the fact that gives you that sort of implies that he's been questioned, or they're not on the same page, and maybe that opens up to saying, well, what other options are there? So it might be a really good thing in the long run.
Big man, did you notice that footage?
Well, not just that, but like what you were talking about just before, like in terms of his messaging post game last week, like it's interesting because we used to be criticise our coaches for being too robotic, but there is a thing about almost giving away too much and being too personable and relatable. Sometimes you got to be a bit of a hard ass, like a bit of almost arrogant, a bit like almost like Fagan was in the same press conference last week against us.
Yep.
And that he basically gave us nothing despite us. Yeah, exactly.
Completely dismissive.
Yeah, I was sort of critical of Fagan. I still am. I think he went too overboard. But at the same time, it's almost the opposite, isn't it, of what Nick's did. Nick's, I'd be curious, if we ever did make a grand final under Nick's, which whether it happens or not, we'll have to wait and see. But if he, like how would our players go in that lead up to that game and the night before and stepping out into the MCG? Like, would they feel the same sort of nerves that Nick's obviously gives off? Because Nick's always gives off a nervous energy before games, almost the relief sort of thing after games. And I just wonder if, like, he's not smashing drywall like Clarko or anything like that, but he does give off like almost he's too emotionally involved, or at least he's sort of got a bit rattled at times. And I just wonder if like either he has to do something about that, or there has to be some sort of messaging change, because that has to have a flow-on effect to some degree. I don't want him to be a robot, like I said, but at the same time, I feel like he almost gives the opposition too much ammunition in terms of how they can attack us, because he almost gives this vibe of he doesn't trust us. So why should the players trust us themselves,
Yeah. And of course, Macca, the argument is that we're sitting fourth. We're in as good a position as we could have hoped for in terms of our win-loss. The game against Hawthorn really was won and lost on inaccuracy, in actual fact. And we've spent 20 minutes now talking about the coach and talking about moves and talking about selection and all the rest of it. The players do need to take responsibility for that, and we've generally been less accurate, apart from the Sydney game, for a little while now. Are we being unfair? Are we focusing too much on the coaching box? And do we need to put the blowtorch a little bit more on the players?
Both, mate. I think the game plan that he had for the first half, while it wasn't anything outstanding or anything overly different, was working well enough. And if we had used our opportunities and finished off correctly, the game could have been really in our back pocket at half time. We just had that. We had that much of the ball. We had that much domination. So, in terms of the game plan, it did work very, very well up to there. So, it's not really just can't really just bag the coach only. You got to also bash the players, because Hawthorn tweaked a little bit in the second half. And we didn't stand up to it or wake up to it or whatever, because it was like they changed Guernseys in the second half. And so the players have got to take a lot of the responsibility as well. I mean, Impey, for example, really the one that really irks me is the fact that just seeing him time after time after time clearing on his own without a player anywhere near him, and you think to yourself, that's not a coaching plan thing. That's players. They're not doing their job.
No, that's bullshit, Macca. That's absolute bullshit, because you can't tell me that Impey gets free if a bloke has been told to wear him like a glove. Absolute bullshit. It's absolutely a coaching thing, because if someone tells someone he doesn't get free if he's being tagged, that doesn't make any sense. It's not logical.
No, but surely, even the most dumbest of coach would surely have sent messages during the game. I would have thought, to tighten up
That's
on
the
it.
point. That's the point. That's the entire point. Like, it was clearly not important. And we'll talk about players. We'll talk about players in a sec because there are a couple of issues with that. But and I'm not disagreeing with you in general, because I do think the players have to take some responsibility. But that particular one that you pointed out, the MP one, all it would have taken is for someone to get on him, and it was clearly the fact that no one did just tells me that it wasn't an instruction.
Or the wrong player on him, the player an incapable one on him.
Well, there's 18 on the ground. He could have flicked them around.
Yeah, well, look, I'll put it.
I mean, he made the masterful move of bringing Brodie Smith on. I mean, shit.
Yeah, look, I don't know who to blame there, Fiend, whether. I would have thought that any coach with any coaching ability would have and should have been trying to get players to play tightly on a guy that's giving them all the drive from the back lines. But if he didn't, well, then he's even worse than I thought he is. But I still say if you're a player out there on the ground, I mean, you've got Walker, who's a senior player, who's been nearly 300 times. He's look at. The MP's playing alongside him in the back pocket. Surely, I mean, if he's going to have any leadership in him at all, he should be making sure there is a player out there too as well.
But
the players
football doesn't work like that Football doesn't work like that anymore, Macca. That's not how it works, right? Football works on structures, and they play to instructions. They don't do things on the fly like that.
Well, surely you can't say that the structure is to allow one player sitting out on his own there as often as he was.
It's not the first time that we've been killed off halfback.
Well, if it's Nix's fault 100%, then it is the greatest one of the greatest coaching boo-boos I've ever seen. I struggle to think that even he would be that stupid. Maybe he is. I don't know.
Mate, but number 4 played, so do you need any more evidence?
Oh, Jesus, yeah. Unbelievable that I mean, those goat pictures that they have, I thought they'd faded by now, but they obviously haven't. Bloody hell. I mean, yeah, he shouldn't have. I cannot believe he trotted out Murphy. I mean, not Murphy's fault. Maybe it is.
No, it's not Murphy's fault. No. It's not Murphy's fault at all. Look, we have reverted, and we'll get to individuals in a minute, but just to polish this off, we saw this in 2023, Macca, when it was just you and me doing this podcast, and we were 6-3 up at the bye, and we were 6-3 up on the back of some fantastic work from Pedler and Rochelle, and like Rochelle getting midfield minutes and all the rest of it, and our young blokes doing really, really well. And then as soon as we got a sniff of the finals, we reverted back to the old school and Crouch came back in and all the rest of it. We are now sitting at the bye in 2025, and the only senior player on the list that is not playing is because he's injured. And I guarantee you that as soon as Matt Crouch is fit, he'll be back in, probably at the expense of Pedler.
Look, in the past, I was stuck up for Crouch last year. But
it's not just about Crouch. It's not just about Crouch, Macca. It's the whole senior bloody gaggle of them.
Yeah, but you can't bring Crouch in now. We've got a midfield that's mobile and running. You can't bring him in now. No.
Well, you said the same about Brodie Smith. You said the same about Lockie Murphy, and yet here we are.
I know. That's why I'm angry, mate, because this is coaching madness. Absolute coaching madness.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to point out the fact that you said not even a coach must be a dickhead not to tag Impey, and I'm just illustrating that there's a lot of evidence on the table.
So you're proving to me that he is a dickhead, and I can't argue against it.
I mean, big man, it's quite shocking to me that we are now the 4th oldest team, or the 7th oldest team, or something or other.
Yeah, is that right? Because I know we're the 9th oldest list, but I'm guessing we're older than our list is.
Well, like I said, we only had like one player out one senior player that didn't play, and that's because he was injured. So when you add up Tex, Brody, Rory, and Murphy, who I don't know, Murphy's only 20 out of 29, but
It's actually 26.
you know,
but
yeah. So every player over 30 on our list was on the park.
yeah. We've discussed this quite a bit, and we talked about this after the Gold Coast game and the Freo games. That you don't. It's easy to sort of forget these things when you're winning games, and to overlook it. But when you lose, it does expose what you have on the park and where you're going in terms of your list transition. And it feels like where we are still more than ever, actually, really neglecting the future to focus on the present. And that's
you
fine.
talked about you talked about Edwards before. He would be 6 games in if he got picked instead of Brodie Smith the first time Smith got picked. He'd be 6 games into his career and probably just fitting in like we're seeing with Dan Curtin now.
Well, yeah, and their argument would be that he's got things to work on, and until that they're happy with that his game's well rounded enough, they won't be playing him. I can understand that. That's the Geelong model that Geelong have used in the past, but we're not Geelong, and we at the expense of an Edwards or stuff, we're playing players that I don't think are in our future plans. Like this is again like the playing of Murphy. Murphy's out of contract this year. This is going back to the Ned McHenry, James Rowe, where we're playing players who are most likely are going to get delisted that very year. Like
we do it all the time, all the way back to Richie Douglas. We did it in his year. In his last year, we played him all the way to the end.
Yeah, we did.
So, we talk about the need to have like the depth of our group, but we're not testing that depth out. I think we'd be right up there for least amount of players played this year. And obviously a part of that is injury, but injury is generally the only way that some of these guys get in the first place. Curtin's the only one who's probably had a consistent goal at it from day dot. So, and obviously we know what happened last year, but at least this year he's getting a fair go at it. Unfortunately, it seems like, and I have to admit, like there is a bit of a bias. If you look at our club, if you're not taken early in the draft, there's a good chance you're not going to get games. Saligo's probably the only one who got a fair go in his first year. Apart from that, we generally only tend to play real high-end talent, and those guys tend to almost get gifted games at times. Whereas if you're not in that group, you like to Taylor, Dowling, Bond, etc. Good luck, So I just feel like we're
Edwards
really...
was a first rounder.
He was, but he wasn't that top 5.
I know it was 20-ish, but.
Yeah,
well, it's not as if he was shit.
He wasn't ready last year, and he's still improved. Like he's still got things to work on, but he couldn't offer us less than what Smith's doing right now.
No,
and
absolutely not.
It's harmless. All you do is get benefits from it because you're getting a game into a guy who's a young talent who's obviously part of the future. Smith's not. You're also helping hopefully alleviate any issues with him going back home at some point because he's more likely to be happy if he's getting games. And we've got to be careful, we're not dumb about this. Like I noticed in Curtin's interview, he was talking about how he lives with Zach Taylor and Hugh Bond. Now, both those guys are out of contract this year and both aren't getting games as it stands. Is that not a concern? Can we not look a bit further than just next round? Like, isn't it important to sort of keep those guys happy, to keep Curtin happy? I mean, these are the things, like you don't want to compromise the team you put out in the park each week. I'm not about gifting games. The Hugh Bonds deserve games. And
it would have been perfect.
We obviously don't trust him.
It would have been perfect on the weekend, 100%.
Yeah. And so it's just these little things. Like I'm all for selection integrity, but if you look at our list, there are spots there to be taken up by these kids who offer just as much. I'm not so blind to think that these guys would come in and dominate, or Billy Dowling's the next bloody I don't know, I think it's John Gunn Wingman or something. But but I still think that there are some weak links in our team. It's not a perfect team by any means. Those last few players and some of those guys like your Murphys, like your Smiths, and you could even talk about a Laird or a Miller or guys like that, a Pedler. We should be keeping that rotation going and getting players into the group to freshen things up and to get a look at these guys, because the season's over halfway done. It's not long before it's almost time to pack up shop and it's back to the holidays again. And we don't know anything about some of these kids now. So and we're running out of time to learn.
Well, and it just shows them up to be liars, because Nick's at the beginning of the season said that we need to take a squad approach to the season. And yet, like you said, mate, we probably have one of the least...
We play 30 players, I think.
Yeah.
31 or 30 players, one of the two. It's like right up there. I think it's the equal lowest.
Yeah.
It might be the lowest amount used.
Yeah. And I guess, Brownie, my problem... I understand that you have to play some senior players. You need the experience on the ground, all the rest of it. I think we've got Neil Bullen now, and we've got Dawson, and we've got a couple of other blokes that have got enough experience that we don't need the old stages in there. And I would argue also that we know what we're going to get from Rory Laird, Brodie Smith, Tex Walker, Lockie Murphy. Their form is exposed, and let's not forget that they were integral parts of the team the last time we contended, and they let us down. Like, in big moments, none of those players have stood up, ever.
No, and you couldn't trust them going forward. I mean, Tex has been disappointing in the big moments his whole career.
Yep.
And the big illustration,
too.
what Big Man just said about the reason you can justify putting some time into some of these players, the illustration is Dan Curtin. They stuck with him this year and obviously said, we're going to give you a run. And like halfway into the season, he's grown in leaps and bounds. He's gone from being a guy that you think, should we persevere with him, to looking at him and thinking, what the hell can this guy be? He's taking marks. He's got a beautiful kick. He's just getting more confident. Every week he's getting more confident to the point where he's a really strong contributor now. And if that's not a perfect illustration to why you have to show faith in these young guys and give them time, then I don't know what he's looking at.
Mm. So, let's straighten up. There's still a lot to not like about how we're going about it, but at the end of the day, we're sitting at fourth on the ladder at the break. So we've done a fair bit right, I guess. So let's focus on that. A couple of issues around, or let's have a look at the team stats first for this particular pile of crap. And there's not a lot in it, stats-wise. But the thing that sticks out to me, which sort of goes along with what I was saying earlier about how our game plans change, and I know that it was a bad night and all the rest of it, but our uncontested possessions down to 158. Our season average after round 4, I think, was 220 or something like that, 230. And that uncontested possessions count in all conditions has dropped over the last 4 to 6 weeks. And that's indicative of the fact that we just don't want to get the ball on the outside anymore. We're happy to go contest to contest. But look, everything was pretty much the same. Disposals were even. They handballed marginally more than us. Disposal efficiency was the same. Inside 50s, 59 to 52. Marks inside 53 apiece. We won the clearances, and 44 to 39. Riley O'Brien, who I thought was pretty decent, won the hitouts 50 to 42. Contested ball, we won 157 to 145. Uncontested 158 to 169 their way. Marks 72 to 61. Turnovers pretty even. Tackles pretty even. The only stat that I was looking at, Wheelo, the only stat that I saw that stuck out to me was, where is it? No, can't even find it. And it was marginal at best anyway. So statistically, it came down to making the most of your chances. Statistically,
yeah, they on those figures you quoted there, they had a few more uncontested possessions than us, and that's
they had 11 more. Yeah.
I think they did take a couple of more risks than we did.
Yeah, they definitely did. Well, that's on that transition, Mac. When they rebanded out, they had one-on-ones, whereas we went to congestion.
Yeah. I mean that's what I'm saying. You know, the stats sort of hide it a little bit, but that definitely was the case.
Mm. Yeah, they tended to exit on the opposite side to where it came in, whereas we tended to we spent 90% of the time on that outer wing.
We certainly did.
Yeah. In terms of a couple of individuals, we highlighted Ben Keys last week, but I don't think we can go past him again this week as the most dynamic player for us. 18 touches, 8 tackles, 2 goals, 1, 4 inside 50s, 5 score involvements, and 288 metres gained. You know, Brownie and I were watching it, weren't we, Brownie? And like, he is so committed. You know that he's pumping the air after the first mark that was taken. You know, he's always up and about. He's a team player and he works his bloody guts out. You couldn't ask for. It's hard to believe when he came to the club and what we saw and how rugged he was around the edges, to him being an integral part of this club now.
Absolutely. I mean, his energy is just like amazing. As you say, every goal he's celebrating, no matter who's kicking it. He doesn't have to be the one kicking the goal. His ability to convert in front of goal too. When he gets half a chance, he tends to finish. And that soccer goal that he got, he managed to get it over the 2 Hawthorn defenders. That was just amazing. You know, that's just a goal out of nothing. And his work rate, yeah, we say it every week. It's just fantastic. Yeah, he was probably the only real forward that had any great impact. I mean, I think Walker had the opportunities in the first half, but he didn't make the most of them. Had he kicked 3 goals, you know, we would have been saying what a great game he had. But it's all about taking your opportunity, and he didn't.
Yeah. The other one I thought was Riley O'Brien, as I mentioned before. I felt like his last month or 5 weeks of work around contract time, ironically, has been some of the best of his career, to be perfectly frank. He had 15 disposals, 3 marks, 4 tackles, 43 hit-outs, 5 score involvements, 5 inside 50s. I'd like him to take more marks around the ground, but it certainly wasn't a night for marking on Friday night, so you can excuse him for that. But, you know, he's not fashionable, and you could question his tap work and all the rest of it, but he's getting more involved around the ground, which I think is probably an area that he's improved over the last 4 to 6 weeks, Macca.
Yeah, look, I'm glad you raised him because it's a bit of an enigma going on. He has been offered a 2-year contract, which he hasn't accepted at this stage, and I don't know whether he's after more money or a longer term. And I think I heard a longer term. And at the moment, I'd say in these last 3 or 4 games, he's actually been very good. We bagged him. We have bagged him season after season, and at the beginning of this season, we often, you know, I say bag, we often criticise him, but you know, he really is playing good football at the moment. Look, there are a lot of clubs that are actually chasing him as well at the moment. So he's got other options. I'm not so Draper from Essendon. There was word that we write into him, but I don't know. I don't see him as being any better than Rob, quite frankly. In fact, maybe I think Rob gives probably more in terms of effort. And so for all the criticism I've ever said of Rob in the past, at the moment I'm saying that Rob is worth his spot in the side, and I wouldn't like to lose him.
Well, the only problem with that, big man, is of course that to get the best out of Rob, you need to have him on 8-week rolling contracts.
Well, this is not the first time it's been like this.
No, that's right.
Rob tends to play. Rob has a history now of playing his best football when he's not in a comfy contract situation.
100%.
So I mean, as much as it looks bad from the outer, you know, I'm sure people, not just at our club, but also supporters of other clubs, are probably saying, why aren't they re-signing this bloke? He's playing
Yeah.
great footy. Maybe us list managers know better. Like maybe they're doing it on purpose to keep him hungry. I don't know, but look, on performance, he's worth more than the 2 years that we're apparently offering him. I guess the question is if we offer him more, does he play to the same level? It's funny for a guy who's so diligent and professional and such a hard trainer. For whatever reason, he does seem to his performances do drop off when he's got a contract all sewn up. So I don't know. Keep him mean, keep him keen. I don't know. Like it just seems like at the moment it's working. But in terms of the long-term future of him, I'd be pretty shocked if he left, to be honest, at this point, unless he's got personal reasons to go. I would be very surprised if we don't end up offering him that extra year, if that's the splitting point.
I really hope we don't.
Well, it's hard, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, he's deserved it. But what does that mean for how he goes next year?
Well,
or even if we re-sign him now, does he shit the bed in the back half of the year? He's got history, as we said, in this regard.
Yeah, I remember a time when once a bloke got over 30, our club policy was to only offer him 1 year at a time. Like, I don't know whether O'Brien. How old's O'Brien? 29.
He's 29, going to 30 this year.
Yeah, so I don't think a ruckman.
He turns 30 in August.
Yeah, I don't think a ruckman at that age, at this stage of his career, and with his backstory, deserves more than 2. I don't think it'd be irresponsible to give him more than 2 years. But then again, I thought giving Miller more than 2 years was irresponsible as well.
That's a double-edged sword of that contract, isn't it? Too. Like, Riley? I mean, he sees that and he probably thinks, "Well, I'm playing better than Miller is.
Yeah,
I'm not that much older. Why don't I deserve the 3 years?"
Yeah, and I've had less knee reconstructions.
But you don't want, do you guys want Draper? I mean, from Essendon, he's injured at the moment, and there's no guarantee he's going to come back in 100% sound condition or in great form. And I don't really like the guy.
Well, we haven't seen a lot of. What's the guy on the twos? That we got from Sydney. Big man. What's the SNFL ruckman's name again?
McAndrew.
McAndrew.
We haven't seen a lot of him. So have we backed ourselves into a corner from a list management perspective that Riley's got us over a barrel because we don't have a proper backup? Or do we have one sitting there that with a bit of development would be offers just as much as O'Brien for half the money?
I've never seen McAndrew play. So.
Well, you should take more interest, Mackie. Mackie, you watch bloody St Kilda versus bloody buttfuck nowhere, and you won't watch our SANFL game. Come on, mate.
No, I like the big time, mate.
You're calling St Kilda versus bloody West Coast or something big time? I'd rather watch Div 4 amateurs. All right, anyway.
Everyone to their own pace. Look,
there are a couple of others that did all right. I can't think of them right now. Sam Berry, I thought, had a good first half. Did a good job on Newcomb. I think Newcomb ended up going on to Dawson in the last quarter. Who else was there? Brandy, Brandy, I was just that's what I was going to throw to you. Talk to us about Saligo.
Yeah, I just thought he was up there with our best players. He was just clean all night. He was one of the few that was his ball handling was clean. His disposal was generally good, whether it was left or right foot, and he just kept presenting. And I just think there's an element of, I know you were a bit worried he might be carrying something and wasn't quite himself, but I think he's been a pretty consistent contributor the last few weeks, and I think he's one that has got that composure under pressure. He's at that really, I reckon he's an elite midfielder now in terms of his ability to use the ball cleanly and his ability to get the ball. I'm a big fan, and I thought he had a really good game.
Well, 21
needs to,
touches, 21 touches, 14 contested
Sorry,
possessions, 8 ground ball gets, had 67% of the CBAs and spent 80% time on ground, which is pretty high for him. So obviously the coaching staff aren't worried about his engine, keeping him out that long. Big man.
Big man.
Oh, sorry. I interrupted before. I was just going to say, it was definitely. I agree that he was pretty solid, but I still am concerned about his inability to find easy ball. He's
I
one
think
that
that's
I think.
his role.
No, but like, why shouldn't it be? Like, for me, the gun midfielders have a great blend of inside outside, and I think for us to go to the next level, we need guys like him to
Look,
become
that's true.
more than they are at the moment. I think obviously we have Draper coming through, but Saligo is probably the other one that we're really looking at as the next gun mid for us, and he's been tracking towards that. But this year his contested work has been great, but he's dropped off a bit in terms of that his mark kick game, his ability to link up and play, and he's not always the best kick, but he's a very smart player, and I think that he's someone we want is getting the ball in his hands as much as possible, and whether that's a game plan thing or whether he just can't cover the ground as much or whatever's going on there, I just feel like we need to find ways of getting him more easy ball. If you look at his numbers, that a lot of his touches were contested on the weekend. I think it's too much. It's too high.
14 of 21.
Yeah, exactly. I think Rankin's in a similar boat where his contested possession percentage is a bit too high. These guys need to get some easier ball, and what that does is it not only gets the ball in the hands of your better players, but also keeps them involved in the game. And we haven't really had big numbers from our midfielders in general. I think he's one of those that needs to have a big one at some point.
Mate, I would counter that, pardon me, by saying that for the last 45 minutes we've been talking about how the Crows have reverted to a contested game plan. So I would suggest that he's not required on the outside because we've stopped giving it. That's how we're playing.
That's fair, but
that's how we're playing. We're playing contested.
You know what I mean?
No, but if he's playing the way the coach, if he's playing the way the coach wants him to play, then you can't knock him for not getting outside ball. I mean, I agree with you. I'd love to see him getting more easy ball.
I don't want it just to turn into another Matt Rouse sort of situation where it's just all bash and crash, because he's going to be pretty fatigued by the end of the year if that happens. Like, I think it'd be better for him and for us if he opens up a bit more.
I agree, but then when you think about it, can you name a pure outside midfielder in our team at the moment?
Well, no, but the best mids are both, aren't they? Like, when you look at the best mids in the comp.
Well, that's true, but none of our midfielders get cheap, easy ball. Like even our in-out players like Geordie and stuff like and blokes like that, the disposals they're getting away from the contest are still under pressure situations.
Yeah,
like
correct.
Dawson gets a lot of his stuff out of contest. No, you're not. I'm not having a crack at you either. I
don't think we're making the most of him at the moment.
No,
I feel like he's got more to give than we're getting out of him.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I think that's my entire argument. I don't think our game plan suits our squad. We've got so much talent and so much run and so much ability, and we're playing this bloody Ross Lyon shit. Anyway, Josh Worrell was another one I thought has had continues to grow. Brandy, you reckon he's in All Australian, or it should be in All Australian considerations? I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, his intercept marking, he is one that does break the lines, and he's creative. I think he's had a really good year, and he uses the ball really well. Like, it's not often that he doesn't find a target and use the ball well. And I like the fact that he's got a pretty good sort of kick to handball ratio. He doesn't have a lot of cheap little 3-metre handballs. He's actually getting metres gained, and he's having impact. And I think, he's got to be in the conversation. I'm not saying that he'll get there, but if he keeps playing the way he's playing, he's got to be, in the top 2 or 3 playing that position in the comp.
Yeah. And that rundown was he would have loved that. He'll be replaying that to everyone at the club at any opportunity.
that was one of my three highlights for the game. That particular rundown, I thought, guy his size chasing somebody like Watson, who really is a slick little mover, but they actually ran him down, and just sheer utter guts and determination, and he just wasn't going to. It really was one of the outstanding things of the game for me. I thought the other one, young Curtin's development, I think that's another point.
Yes, I was going to mention him next.
Love to see the way that he's come on, and his ability to take overhead marks. He looks so confident when he takes them.
It's very, very natural, isn't he, Macca?
Oh, I just feel like he's just taking a cherry off a tree. He's doing it that easy, and he's got a beautiful leg on him. So he's gone from, like last year, he got burnt in his first game, being put on Archie in the back line, which was absolutely madness by Nick, just proving that he can't coach. And just sort of decimate.
More evidence. The evidence is racking up, Mac.
oh yeah, but I thought his development was great, and the other thing outstanding, which wasn't positive, was that umpire 22. He was always going to do us in, and he did one of the crucial ones in the last quarter. I don't know what that guy's got against us. Yeah,
but you know what, Mac? The umpire should never have been able to influence that game. And yes, I mean, it was a game of two halves in respect to the umpiring too. I think we almost flipped the bloody freeze for and against in the first and second half. And there were some dodgy ones, like the deliberate out of bounds on Fogarty was ridiculous. The one where Curtin didn't give the ball back. Well, I don't think he had the ball in his hand, for God's sake. You could argue the Dawson one deliberate out of bounds was pretty soft. Did you see plenty of that? There were a couple of missed ones. Like, there was plenty of umpiring things, but we should know that. Unfortunately, when you see Matt Stevick's name on the bloody sheet, you know that you're going to have to take him out of the equation by not letting the game be close.
Yeah, I won't go any further. It just had to just mention it and then move on from it. So I just knew it when I saw we had him that we would just get at least one really bad decision or one crucial decision against us.
Well, the most crucial one, Macca, was right at the death when Fogarty got that free and Ginnivan bloody tapped the ball away with 1 second to go, and the umpire didn't. That should have been a 50. The umpire had blown time off. So that should have been a 50-metre penalty, and Fogarty would have been having a shot from probably about 45 metres out.
Yeah, look, I don't think many of us thought about it at the time. I don't know whether you thought about it or not, but when I read
That's
about
why
it,
I brought it up.
Yeah, yeah. No, it took technically, yes, that he would argue that he stumbled over it. He was trying to make it look like he was trying to pick it up. I don't know why it wasn't paid, and it could have been
anyway
a match.
But
enough of umpires, isn't it?
Yeah, no. I mean, the umpires had an impact, but it shouldn't never have come to that.
Correct.
All right, so we head into the break, and we're also at the 1 hour 30-minute mark. Look, as I said, I guess we'll go through the rest of the round first, and then we'll talk about the where to from here. So, Macca, you can quickly.
Yeah, we'll do it quickly. Yeah.
Hang on, let me do this. Wait a second. Hold your horses there. So, Macca. Oh, for the love of God.
First game, St Kilda.
Yeah, so we got. Sorry, mate. I know you're not watching YouTube. I actually have to do stuff. Bulldogs 2012-132 to St Kilda 8-12-60 was a bit of a shellacking.
A non-event, absolutely non-event, and Bulldogs were just so dominant. It wasn't funny. He had 13 individual goal kickers in their 20 goals. See, they played him again, and this was a duplicate first one, double up. They played in round 6, beat them by 71 points then. So This is 72 points this time, so they're improving.
That's all.
Got to mention
It was a non-event.
No, Wanganeen Miller, 31 disposals. Love to get him.
Yeah, and St Kilda kicked 8 goals. Giants 17-5-1-0. Well, I mean, it's a fact, right? The Giants 17-5-107. At home, Brisbane lose 13. That's the second home game that they've lost this season. 13-18-96.
Might even be the third thing.
Maybe.
But anyhow, they left the door open in the second quarter. They kicked 44 goals, 5-3 goals. Typical Adelaide sort of stuff. The second half belonged to GWS, who they really found their form in the second half. You really did have the Orange Army swarming down with the ball, and they had Hogan and Cadman up in the forward line. I think they kicked 6 and 5 goals respectively, and they got up. So Brisbane blew it with poor kicking and left the door open, and GW said thank you very much.
Well, I mean, they must have been unlucky again.
Not this time. No, not this time.
So, Mac, I was just going to say, Cadman he's such a great example of how you got to be patient with tools.
Absolutely.
You could see the confidence in him just grow through the game, and he was unstoppable in that second half. He was amazing.
Yeah, spot on.
Geelong giving Essendon a lesson, 23-13, 151 to 88-56.
Yeah, well, they're just too good at the moment. Bailey Smith, 41 disposal. Holmes, 36 disposal. They just ran right, and Cameron got 6 goals, and Shannon Hill, he got 4 with the ball. Ball's just come in that many bloody times. They've got to get goals. I've got to say this about Essendon, though. We talk about trying new Adelaide's not hesitant to put young players in there. Essendon, they've got, I think it was 6 first-year players in their team. So while they're going to be rat shit at the moment, they're trying to build for the future. Nothing else to say there.
You'd love Zach Merritt in our side, though, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you love to give Essendon a couple more picks just to try and get Zach Merritt a bloody premiership?
It'd be handy.
Handy? He'd be absolute cream on our cake, I reckon, in the midfield.
Yeah. Yep.
Dockers getting out of jail and keeping their finals hopes alive, or I'll say alive, but realistic. 10-13-73 to North 10-7-67.
Yeah, very wet conditions again for Fiend for Freo and North Melbourne. But I'll say this: I thought North Melbourne they played fanatically. I don't think they're as good as the other team, but they've got players that will be very good players. David Juniak, well, he is an established player. Sheedle, very, very good. But on the other hand, Brayshaw and Sarong, they are classy midfielders, and they just got enough of the ball to keep the ball peppering in there. And in the end, they had a very narrow escape. They just got up they got the last goal, and that was a winning one.
And then we had the pair, 14-9-63, beating Melbourne 9-14-68. Oh, sorry. Is that right? No, 14-9-63 is not right. What am I talking about? Anyway, Port
49-9. Yeah, bad kicking for goal by Melbourne as well here. But, Port looked pretty good. I hate to say it, but they did look pretty good. Gorn played well for Melbourne, but the Port midfielders still dominated. Butters, Warren Francis, Bergman, Rosie from half back, and then he had a stint in the middle as well. And I don't know how you put somebody else in somebody else's place, but Radigalia, 13 marks in defence. He's never had that many in his bloody career. I just can't believe it was the same guy.
Well, how many goals did Georgiades kick?
Well, he kicked 7 goals. He was outstanding up forward.
What the hell was going on there?
Well, they delivered the ball beautifully to him, though. You got to say that he led. Look, it was very good. It was the type of football you would like to see from us, with the foot on the lead and put it straight on his chest. So
I reckon Georgiades is another example of what Big Man was saying earlier about having patience with big guys.
Yeah, very much so. But No, they played very, very well. Pickett, he played like the $1.3 million a year player in the first half, and he played like a threepenny halfpenny person in the second half. Only got back one touch, I think.
Threepenny halfpenny.
5 cents for you, Clean.
Thank you. And the last game, I didn't. That's the score that I've got up is the score as it was when we went to press, and it didn't change much in the end. It was Carlton 12-14-86, Eagles 7-10-52, and nobody cares.
I think you've summed it up well.
All right. Well, look, let's just straighten up. We're at the bye. Oh God, what am I doing? Let's talk about the flag, the ladder, real quick. One moment, please. So we've got Collingwood on top on 44 points, Geelong on 40. They seem to be clearing out at the moment. Lions just going on 38, Crows and Hawthorn on 36. The Suns with a game in hand, or 2 games really in hand, 32 points. The Giants on 32 also with Fremantle. And then outside the 8, we have the Bulldogs on 28. You would think, really, even though Carlton and Porter and Essendon are on 24, you would think that the Bulldogs are just about the only team outside the 8 that could give it a shake, Mac.
They're a genuine chance, because they've really got a heap of good players. And they're very good midfield.
With Darcy back, they become a different proposition.
He's classy, isn't he? I mean, he's only young, but he's classy already.
Oh, classy!
He'll end up the best big man in the best big forward in the game.
Well, I don't know about that, but we got a lad. And then St Kilda on 20 with Melbourne, North on 14, Richmond on 12, and West Coast on 4. All right. So just finishing up at the bye, we're. What the hell am I doing? I've really lost the plot here. We're at the bye. We've got to be happy with where we're at as a club. From a pure, position on the ladder. Are we the finished product? No. Are we confident that we've got a team? I don't know. I'll go around the room on this one. Are we confident that we've got a 23 that are capable of mixing it with at the pointy end, Brownie?
I think if they're allowed to play the right game style, I think we've got enough talent. I'm not saying we've got enough talent to go maybe to make a grand final. I think we've got enough talent to win a final this year, but I don't think our current game style is probably going to stand up in finals. So I think we do need to just work on, having a few different sort of game styles and a plan B. If things aren't working, we've got to be able to change things up and a little bit more attacking and using the ground. But I do think we've got the talent for sure.
Yeah. Four Eyes Billy says we've got the best offense and the third best defense. Well, I'm sorry, mate, but we no longer have the best offense. We're down to about number 3.
Bulldogs, is it?
If you,
Geelong Bulldogs.
Bulldogs. If you take the last 6 weeks, we're not even close. So those numbers that people like to trot out about how good our offense is, that's on the back of some pretty big scores in the first 3 or 4 rounds of the season. But that's certainly not indicative of where we're at the moment. So people that stick that stat up are just it's a furphy. Macca, what do you think? Do we have a team to mix it with the big boys?
Look, we have a team that'll make finals, and I think that given who we play in the finals, I think we're capable of winning a final. But we're certainly not, in my opinion, capable of winning a flag, because there's a couple of teams that are just that better than us, that they've got the complete package and we haven't at this stage.
Big man.
Oh, look, it's hard. It's hard to know, isn't it? I think that's the next. I really want to see us get our our game back. And we know we talked about what we've, and you're like, yes, I know we've improved, but like Nick's has made it very public that he wanted us to improve our defensive stuff. And I'm worried that we're going back into 2024 mode if we're not careful. Because, you know, obviously in 2023 we were very good offensively, but we got scored against as well. And then in the offseason, Nick's talked about how he wanted to sharpen up the defense. Unfortunately, it meant that we lost all our run and drive, and we had our scoring dried up a lot. So it felt like we were back to 2023 Crows, and now we're getting back to 2024 Crows again. And as you know, we talked about how the weather definitely has an impact on that. But you know, I'd be curious to see how we go if we played a game at Marvel. I'd love to see us actually have a game at Marvel at some point, just to see how much of that is the weather versus how much it's actually our game plan. But there's no doubt we're not playing the kind of footy we were before, and yeah, it just feels like it's a bit anemic at the moment. So I still have faith in the group that we can. I don't think we're going to contend this year, but I still think we're going to hopefully get our mojo back in the back half of the year. And our run does open up a little bit. It's not super easy, but it's probably gone past quite a lot of the most difficult games. There's still a few really tough ones chucked in there, don't get me wrong, but there's definitely some winnable games coming up. So I'd be shocked if we didn't play finals, but more and more I'm starting to think, well, I think maybe winning a final is probably as far as we'll go this year at this point.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, look, there's no way we'd lose. We miss finals. I just can't see it happening. We'd have to fall in a massive hole for us to miss finals. But we could get ourselves into a position where we're playing a knockout final away if we're not careful, which would probably be a waste of the season given our start and our position at the bye. But, you know, we've certainly got games that on paper we should win, but they're the ones sometimes that come and bite us in the arse. And the Richmond game after the bye is one that I really worry about because it's away from home. Yet Richmond can get on a bit of a run with youthful exuberance, and we might come back a bit post-bye blues sort of thing. But I certainly think that notwithstanding a couple of the senior players that shouldn't be in the side, I think that we've got enough players in our squad to make a prelim final, in my opinion. I don't think we're quite the finished product yet in terms of being able to compete in the last game. But I certainly think we've got a top four squad. But how he uses that squad, both in terms of selection and game plan, is going to be quite telling. And I hope that there's enough people at the club of a similar view that making the finals this year and going out will not be an acceptable result. And I hope that there's enough scrutiny on the coach with regards to the type of game that we're playing when you look at where we've got our money invested in our squad, which is pretty much our forward line. You know, that we don't squander that. So yeah, I think we can. I think we'd make finals. I think we've got a good enough squad to make a prelim, but it'll depend very much on decisions that are made. And the last thing that I want to just touch on before we go is the situation around Tex Walker. In my opinion, Tex, when it doesn't matter what the club say, we're not managing Tex at all. That was another game where Tex didn't need to be selected. It was obvious from a long way out that it was going to be cold, it was going to be slippery, and then we didn't even sub him off. So we're not managing him. Is that indicative of the club mentality, Macca? Like, I couldn't imagine this. Like, Kane Cornes got gifted 300 games, retired the day after he played his 300th game. Ken Hinckley kept picking him until he got to 300. Kane Cornes has admitted that he's got a lot to be grateful to Ken about for getting him to 300. Imagine being a player that gets to 300 games with an asterisk. Like, every other player that's played 300 games for the Adelaide Crows has bloody earned it. But I don't know whether we could say that about Tex at the moment.
Well, look, there's 100% he should not have played this game. I mean, the three-headed monster was never going to be applicable in these conditions and be overly effective. In fact, between them, I think they tallied 7 points actually, and which Tex, what did he own? 3 points. It should have been a much more smaller, mobile player. This was a perfect opportunity to give. If you're really managing Tex as they say they are, rest him in this particular game. This is just the perfect game to rest him. Wet conditions, not ideal for three big men. You put in one more mobile player, it could have made the difference between winning and losing. So, I think the club need a real kick in the arse for actually playing Tex in this game. Because
not just this game. We took him to Western Australia. We haven't managed him at all.
No attempt to manage him. You can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to manage him to get 300 games. That's what they're trying to do. And in one way, I respect that in the sense that they have some sense of loyalty to him. But you don't do that at the expense of winning.
Club's never bigger than the individual. Club's always bigger than the individual, Macca.
I know. And if it'd been me, I would definitely not have picked him to go there to bloody Tasmania in a nighttime game. When it's going to be 3 degrees and wet, you just don't do it. And
that would have had the big red circle around it, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, this would have been definitely a rest game. Definitely a rest game. But
Brownie, would you like to get to 300 with your last 15 games being shit?
I wouldn't, but I think the senior players at the Crows have all got that Rory Sloane mentality where, he's come out and said, the only way I'm going to stop playing is if you force me. I'm not going to retire by myself. And it was only the eye injury that made him, retire. Otherwise, as you said on the weekend, he'd probably still be trying to play now. But I think it's clear that the club their goal is to get Tex to 300. Having the chance, if we're, pretty much guaranteed to make finals, that gives them one chance to play him in a final. So that means they're only going to rest him one game in the back end of the year. And I reckon that'll play out. Unless there's injury, I reckon that he's only going to get rested for one game.
Yeah. Yeah, and Robsy in the chat says something very pertinent. He wants to get to 300 games despite Kane. And as petty as that sounds, I reckon there'd be a lot of truth in that, big man.
Potentially. I mean, even to this day, that Corns Walker thing still maintains. Like, Corns has an obsession with Tex, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. Well, look what they did last week with the whole bloody Nathan Nasiah Wanganeen Miller. Shit, that was all driven by Kane Corns.
Well, if it wasn't Corns, it was certainly the power. It's someone at the power. Yeah, it's amazing how that's still going even now, given how much time's passed and how much Tex has done since all that criticism he copped. I know he had the incident, but in terms of his football, some of his best football was post Corns' comment. But anyway, like this, it's got a bit of the Mark Murphys about it, isn't it, as well? Like, just sort of wheelchairing him out to 300 games. I wish he was playing better footy. I will say that their thought process would have been that he had a rest against West Coast a few weeks ago. He's got a rest now. He's got the bye, so I guess they would have thought he's had enough. I would have definitely rested him for that Perth game. He didn't play well that night anyway. So that's one, that big flight over. Maybe that would have made a difference. Maybe he would have been performing better if he had that rest. Like, we don't, at his age, and experience, those things can add up pretty quickly. And I noticed even Boak was managed a week after a bye by the power. So it's, you got to be careful of these things. And it wouldn't hurt us so much if Fogg was in better form. Because unfortunately, Fogg's lost his mojo too. He's struggling to mark the footy. So we've got two talls who can't really offer much in the air at the moment, and one who unfortunately couldn't kick. So it's a bit of an issue. That three-headed monster is not looking too scary at the moment. I'd like to think that with the bye that Tex will come back and he'd be refreshed and everything. But the thing is, if he's going to make this 300 game marker, he's got to play every game or miss one and play a final. So let's just remove the finals out of the equation. He's still got to play 8 of the 9 next games. I don't think that's proper management for him. So
No, of course not.
yeah, so for me, I would be erring on the side of caution with him because I think it's pretty clear that he actually played some decent footy in the first block of the year. Like that game we talked about, the Gold Coast game, we thought he should have been rested. He actually played pretty well that day. It's one of the reasons we got back in the game. But he hasn't looked himself probably since the Geelong night, I think. He's probably been a bit flat since then. He hasn't got his energy and agility to the same level that we know he can be, and it's just not happening for him. So yeah, we talk about it. But as I said before, I think the Fog thing doesn't help. I think that compounds matters. That Fog's in pretty ordinary form as well.
But I still say that, like, when Tech's in the side, Fog gets the third choice bloody leading running patterns and all that. I think Fog suffers from the fact that he's, like, often the guy that people dump balls on his head to. Like, honestly, I think Fogarty would benefit greatly from Tex not being in the side. Branny, what do you reckon about that?
No, but there's... Sorry, you go.
Yeah, without doubt. I think he will grow a leg if Tex wasn't there.
Is that allowed?
Unfortunately.
If you have 3 legs,
I don't think it's
like...
Yeah, that's something we're going to have to worry about. A bit like James Magnuson. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say James Holmes. John Holmes.
No, not going there. But I do think we're going to have to wait to see that. Oh, my God, you've lost it. Yeah, we're going to have to wait till next season to see how Fog can operate without Walker in the side, because it's not going to happen this year. But I do think he basically gets the scraps at the moment.
You reckon Tex retires at the end of the season?
Oh, well.
I don't know.
If he doesn't retire at the end of the year, then, yeah, I'm giving up.
Mac, I reckon the club have just said, look, we're not going to win a grand final this year, so let's make it our primary goal to get Tex to 300.
No, I don't think that. I think it's more that they think they owe him loyalty because of what he's done for them in the 291 games up to now. So
they paid him for?
Which they paid him for. Yeah,
exactly.
But,
there's another club at the moment that's got a senior player that's out of contract that might be looking for another club. How many other teams do you see senior players go to other clubs for the last 2 or 3 seasons of their career, and none of them come from Adelaide? What happened to you, Mac? Can you guys hear him? I can't hear you guys anymore. All right, I can't hear you guys anymore. I don't know whether you can hear me. Put your hand up if you can hear me. All right, so we're right at the end of the podcast. We've got nothing more to say. It's the bye. I'm not going to restart everything just because I can't hear you anymore. So thanks, boys. Oh, there you are. You're back now. What happened?
It's a bloody miracle. You'll be throwing out loads of fishes next feed.
I think it was a bloody curse, not a blessing.
No, what I was saying, and I think it's really you were saying about the club, and I think the club does feel that it owes him, whether they should or not. And again, and the way that Rory Sloane talks about it, he thinks it's quite the club owes it to him to play him. So I think it's like a thing that in our particular club. It certainly didn't apply in Hawthorn and all those other places, but they seem to think that they got to let them limp to the line before they go.
Mm.
But it is Tex is limping to the line at the moment.
Yeah, to me, it's got a big asterisk next to it, and if he's comfortable with that, well and good. But I'd be a little bit embarrassed. I'd rather play 295 solid games of football and go out on a good note.
Well, I have no morals, and I'd take it if I was him. It's not him.
See,
it's, the club.
That's the difference between you and me, Macca. I've got morals. Ask Brownie.
Well, you'll get nowhere, mate.
Taking the fifth.
On that note, it's the bye. Now, we will have a podcast next week. We'll just talk about a bit of the state of play and where we're at and where we're going to go. It won't be a long one, but or do you guys want a break? Let's have a vote. Big man, do you want a break?
I mean,
Question
it'd be
without
interesting to
notice.
sort of have a little. It'd be interesting to have a sort of a chat about to sort of look back on the year and so far, and obviously looking forward. Like, it wouldn't have to be a big podcast, but I think that'd be interesting to sort of have a little look
Right.
at how we're going. But I'm up for it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if you could run a podcast that goes for about an hour instead of 3.
Okay.
Challenge
Well, we're
for
on
you.
2 now. We're on 2 now, so that's already a majority. So we'll be back next week, and we'll have an hour-long podcast. And I'll just hit the stop
Mid-season
streaming button
report
at
card.
an hour. Yeah, mid-season report card. That'll do. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Thanks to those on Discord and also on YouTube. We really appreciate your support. Enjoy the bye week. We're definitely not going to lose next week, which is fantastic news. But until then, stay safe, and we'll see you next weekend. Good night, all.
Yeah, good night, all.
See you guys.
Deal. Bye.